The sun had barely set when the fog descended upon Eldridge, a small town nestled at the edge of a vast forest. It crept in like a living thing, swallowing the streets and homes, muffling sounds, and blurring the familiar into the unknown. The townsfolk, accustomed to the occasional mist, thought little of it at first, but this was different. It felt alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. As the fog thickened, Sarah was in her kitchen, preparing dinner for Ethan. The boy, a curious 7-year-old with a vivid imagination, peered out the window, his small face pressed against the glass. "Mom, it's like a blanket," he said, eyes wide with wonder. "Just a fog, sweetheart." "Nothing to worry about," Sarah replied, though a knot of unease twisted in her stomach. She glanced at the clock. It was getting late. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the house. Startled, Sarah opened the door to find Mark, his face pale and eyes wide. "You need to get Ethan inside, now," he urged, glancing nervously at the fog. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "I saw something in the mist. Something wrong. We need to stay inside until it passes," he said, his voice trembling. As they retreated into the house, the fog thickened outside, swirling like a living entity. The air grew colder, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. Ethan, sensing the tension, clutched his mother's hand. "Mom, I'm scared." "Me too, buddy," she whispered, trying to sound brave. Hours passed, and the fog showed no signs of lifting. The trio huddled in the living room, the only light coming from a flickering candle. Mark shared stories of the forest, tales Mrs. Hargrove had told him as a child, stories of creatures that lurked in the shadows, waiting for the unwary. "Do you think they're real?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just stories," Sarah reassured him, though doubt gnawed at her. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by a guttural growl that sent chills down their spines. Mark jumped to his feet, peering through the window. "We need to see what that was," he said, but Sarah grabbed his arm. "No, we stay inside," she insisted, fear gripping her heart. But curiosity got the better of Mark. "I'll just take a quick look. I'll be right back," he promised, slipping out the door before Sarah could protest. Minutes felt like hours as Sarah paced the room, Ethan clinging to her leg. The growls grew louder, more menacing, and the fog seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "Mom, where's Mark?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know, sweetheart. He'll be back," she lied, trying to mask her own fear. Just then, the door swung open, and Mark stumbled in, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. "We need to leave, now!" he shouted. But before he could explain, the fog surged into the house, swirling around them like a living nightmare. From the depths of the mist, shadowy figures began to emerge, twisted shapes with elongated limbs and hollow eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. Sarah's heart raced as she grabbed Ethan, pulling him close. "What are they?" she gasped. "I don't know, but they're not human," Mark shouted, backing away as the figures advanced. In a panic, Sarah grabbed a kitchen knife, her hands shaking. "We can't let them take us," she cried, her voice breaking. The figures drew closer, their whispers echoing in the air, a cacophony of despair and hunger. "Join us! Join us!" they chanted, their voices slithering into Sarah's mind. "Mom!" Ethan screamed, his small voice cutting through the terror. In that moment, Sarah felt a surge of determination. "We fight!" she yelled, brandishing the knife. "We're not going anywhere!" With a sudden burst of courage, she lunged at the nearest figure, but it dissipated into mist, reforming behind her. The room filled with a cacophony of whispers, each one clawing at her sanity. "Stay close," she shouted to Ethan and Mark, who stood frozen in fear. As the figures closed in, Sarah felt a warmth envelop her, a protective instinct for her son. "We're not afraid of you," she screamed, her voice echoing through the fog. The figures hesitated, their whispers faltering. Seizing the moment, Sarah grabbed Ethan's hand and bolted for the back door. "Run!" she shouted, pushing through the fog that seemed to part for them. They stumbled into the night, the fog swirling around them, but no longer pressing in. The figures lingered at the edge, their whispers fading into the distance as they retreated into the shadows. Breathless and terrified, they found themselves at the edge of the forest, the fog lifting just enough to reveal a path leading away from Eldridge. "We have to keep moving," Mark urged, glancing back at the town. As they fled into the darkness, Sarah glanced back one last time. The mist hung over Eldridge like a shroud, and she knew that whatever had been unleashed would not be contained for long. "Mom, are we safe?" Ethan asked, his voice small. "For now," she replied, gripping his hand tightly. "But we have to stay together." And as they ventured deeper into the unknown, the fog behind them began to swirl once more, whispering promises of what lay ahead.
Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in your nightmares.